welcome. In this episode, I'm going to continue the story emailed to me by a subscriber who shares some of the experience she has had while living in Appalachia. In case you missed part 1, Chloe emailed me about a creature living under her home and the things she experienced while living there. I will put a link to that video in the description below. Well, that thing isn't all she's had to deal with in her life, as there is a new batch of strangeness where she lives now, in Appalachia. I'd like to once again thank Chloe for sharing her stories with me and allowing me to share them with you. And remember, please keep any thoughts and comments respectful. While skepticism is fine, outright ridicule or anything similar will not be tolerated on this channel. Alright, let's get into today's stories. The next part of Chloe's story takes place in southwestern Ohio, where she currently lives in Appalachia. I have recently seen an uptick in videos about Appalachia and the weird things that go on there, so I asked her to share some of her experiences with me. Chloe and her family moved from about an acre of land to 92 acres in the woods, where there was, according to her, plenty of room for something spooky to live. They have 2 pygmy goats and to guard them 3 geese with no survival instincts at all, she says. The geese lived in a brooder in the garage until they were old enough to go to the barn. During that time they had no issues with them, but since they've moved out to the barn, every night like clockwork at certain times they squawk and freak out about 30 seconds at a time, several times at night. She says it's down to the minute that they do this. They see or hear something at night at 11:50, 1:30, and 2 a.m. Chloe adds that geese are really tough and not much freaks them out, but something gets them really concerned every single night. Ever since she was young, Chloe has had nightmares about something perched on her roof looking in her windows, to the point that as soon as it's dark, she has to have the windows closed, locked, and the curtains drawn. This was before she knew crawlers have this habit and is pretty certain where the nightmares came from. She has had things tapping at her windows, something throwing little chunks of what she describes as dried mud at the screen, amongst other odd things. Of course, there are all the typical things like feeling watched in the woods being way too scary to go into at night, and the like. But there are weird sounds and things too. One of the weird sounds she can't figure out is almost like the sound of grating metal. She says if you've ever run your nails down a metal screen on a door like a very fine metal mesh, it's exactly like that but 30 times louder. It sounds like something with claws is doing it. She and her family thought it was a bobcat or something, but apparently they don't make any sounds that could be confused with metal. They are also not close enough to their neighbors for it to be them. Then there is something they can hear walking just inside the tree line for literal hours on end, and whatever it is smart enough to stay out of a flashlight beam. It sounds way too heavy to be a deer, and they don't have anything large enough in the area like bears or boar to produce footsteps like that. Deer are about the largest animal they have there, and what they hear walks slow. Almost, she says, like something stalking prey. They really hate the thought of something stalking around in the trees because they have 2 small dogs that they have to walk at night right along the tree line. Right next to this thing, whatever it is, that they've never been able to catch a single glimpse of in a flashlight beam after living there for a year. Chloe says she isn't sure what it could be because they don't have any caves, caverns, or quote gross cellars, so she's pretty much convinced it isn't a crawler, and isn't sure what cryptids are in eastern Ohio. The next weird thing she told me about is for about 4 months leading up to her email, they've had drones circling their property with no explanation. And it's only their property. It isn't just one at a time either, but at least 6 a night going in a pattern over their land like they're monitoring something. Chloe mentions that the drones are probably 100% unrelated to anything else she has discussed, but she just can't imagine what they could be doing there. She says it would make sense to see them from time to time because sometimes they use them in highly wooded areas to monitor for fires and things like that. But it's been going on for quite a while and they do the same thing every night. This to her is less spooky and more concerning that someone or several someones drive all the way out there every night to fly drones. and police have said that they can't do anything about it. But she and her family have a running joke that they're just keeping tabs on Sasquatch or something. Chloe ends by saying she and her family have a general rule of thumb to not go in the woods at night because all of them, as skeptical as they are, just get the vibe it's a lovely place during the day, but at night it's best left undisturbed. As soon as the sun goes down, it's one of those forests that turns pitch black, so it's not even possible to go out there without a strong flashlight. They live 3 minutes from a huge state park and 20 minutes from Ohio's only national park, Wayne National Forest, so they're pretty deep in the woods where they live. She says all the TikTok videos about Appalachia are pretty spot on when they say to not look too closely into the trees. You can't quite be sure exactly what you'd find if you did. All of her friends interested in the paranormal and the like have wanted to go on hikes at night, but it freaks her out so much she isn't sure if she could do it. She adds that even just the amount of coyotes they have around where they live freaks her out because that big of a pack could potentially be aggressive. They have hills on all sides, which almost makes a bowl effect when they begin howling. It sounds like they're everywhere and it's very unsettling. These are just a few of her stories, and she goes out of her way to not go outside at night, not to camp on her land or anything else similar because she isn't trying to see anything creepy. She closes by saying she knows a lot of people will let their curiosity get the best of them, but she's had enough happen that she's totally fine with avoiding that kind of stuff. And who could blame her for that? She has definitely experienced a lot in her young life. For my thoughts and reaction to her story, I will once again share what I told Chloe about her experiences in Appalachia. The geese freaking out at exactly those times is really bizarre. There's no telling what's out there, but being that none of them have been killed, I would guess that it's not a cryptid. Usually when cryptids are involved, livestock either go missing or are killed. As for the nightmares about being watched through her window, I would directly correlate that with a crawler, which she already did once she knew what she was dealing with in her childhood home. They are notorious for it, even on the second floor of homes. The tapping and throwing stuff at her window is almost like whatever is out there is trying to get her attention. As for the footsteps, that's really creepy. My first thought was Sasquatch, being that they are so heavy. They can also stay out of sight when they want to, but that goes for most cryptids as well, if I'm being honest. If not Sasquatch, maybe a dogman, but I'm not so sure the footsteps would be as heavy if it was a dogman. They aren't usually described as heavy-footed, so I'm thinking it's a Sasquatch. I told her I'd definitely keep a close eye on her dogs though. I wouldn't want anything to happen to them. I've heard of Sasquatch, dogman, and crawler sightings in Ohio, but I know that there have been more. Well, black-eyed kids as well, but they aren't cryptids. The drone thing is very weird too. They are definitely up to something out there, but as for what, I don't have a guess at this time. Perhaps they're trying to make the next creepy TikTok video about Appalachia. I also told her she should definitely listen to her instincts and gut feeling if they are telling her not to go outside at night. I always say you have to be careful what you go out looking for because if you search long enough, you will eventually find something, good or bad. If there are cryptids, it's best to ignore them and go on about your business. They sometimes take an interest in people, but from everything I've heard, when people ignore them, they eventually move on. On the opposite side of that, when people do go out and seek them, they sometimes put themselves in a position where these things take a special interest in them and sometimes even follow the people home, which is called the hitchhiker effect. I think she is doing the right thing by staying out of those woods at night, especially after everything I have seen and heard about Appalachia. Chloe does mention that these are just a few of her experiences while living there. I told her if she wants to share more to email me. Would you like for her to share some more of her experiences living in Appalachia? Let her know in the comments below. What do you think about Chloe's experiences? Would you stay inside at night or would you go out to see just what you could find out there? And that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed these stories. If you'd like to hear more stories like these and other types of cryptids, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you want to send me your story, I'd love to read it. My email is wolfwhocriedcryptid@gmail.com. I will also put it in the description below. With your permission, I may want to use it in an episode. Even if you'd prefer that I didn't share your story on my channel and just want someone to listen, email me. We can privately talk about your encounter. And please remember to keep it civil in the comments section. No one deserves to be ridiculed whether they believe or not. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you at the next episode.